We know how prostitution began in Virginia City. Of course, it began in 1859 with the rush to Washoe, the silver rush, the Comstock lode. Tonight, I'd like to talk about a story. In this story, I'm working on the book. It's included in my book, Strange and Sordid Tales of the Comstock. This is the story of how prostitution ended in Virginia City. And it ended in 1947. Now, during World War II, the government came and told Reno and Las Vegas area and all these places that they did not want their servicemen going to brothels. And if the brothels weren't closed, they were going to make the servicemen on their leave stay on the bases. They weren't going to come and gamble and spend their money in the bars and saloons and stuff. So Reno and a lot of other cities obeyed and closed up because they didn't want to lose that business. But Virginia City's always been sort of a live and let live, so Virginia City more or less turned a blind eye to what was going on. A friend of mine told me that during World War II, the brothels in Virginia City had many different clothing items for men, and the men who came up there in uniform changed into the outfits they got at the brothel so they could walk around town and nobody would be any wiser that they actually were servicemen. That may be true. I believe it is, but who can say? Okay, so Tony Harvey, now he was a real loser. His first wife divorced him because he was a lousy husband who beat on her and cheated on her, so she divorced him. He had children to support. He didn't support them. His second wife, Rose, they met and fell in love just before he was put in San Quentin, but she stood by her man and she waited for him to get out of prison. When he got out, they were married, and this was 1945. And standing at their wedding, and this is a strange part of this story, her daughter was married to Tony's brother. Okay, so her name was Rose Harvey, and Rose and Tony were living outside of Stockton, California, and Tony had a business in Virginia City. Guess what that business was? It was a brothel. Okay, so Tony had his brothel up in Virginia City. He'd leave Rose at home in Stockton and come up and play around. Well, Rose was the jealous sort and didn't like this, and she demanded, "I'm going to go to Virginia City with you. You're not leaving me here alone." So he took Rose with him to the brothel, which was actually, I say brothel, it was actually a house, a little house. He owned one house, and then another house was the brothel. We're talking little houses. Okay. And apparently he had a girl working for him that didn't like Rose. Rose didn't like her. So these women were constantly fighting. You know how that might be. That might be a pretty bad thing. So he sent Rose home. And while Rose was home, he met and fell in love with a woman named Kay O'Brien. And in March of 1947, he and Kay O'Brien were married in Sparks. Everyone was wondering, though, where's Rose? Rose's daughter asked, "Where's Rose?" But Rose was writing postcards and sending postcards to the daughter, so she didn't think that much of it until Tony came home one evening, July 13th, 1947, unexpectedly. He'd done a business trip, yeah, right, down in Stockton, and he came home to Kay, who was in the kitchen cooking. She was cooking lamb chops, but she wasn't cooking lamb chops for him. She was cooking lamb chops for her friend, Louis Barton. This infuriated Tony. He was the jealous sort himself. How dare he? Here's Louis Barton sitting on my sofa waiting for my wife to finish cooking lamb chops. How dare you? He pulls his gun and starts shooting at Louis. Well, Lewis pulls his gun and starts shooting back. They struck each other in the stomach. Lewis runs out of the house. Tony's ran out of bullets. He's chasing after Lewis. Lewis takes off running up, I believe it was F Street, where he was stopped by a sheriff and taken to the hospital. He has a gunshot wound in the stomach. Back at Tony's little house on G Street, and I'm going to stop right here right now and say, this house is still standing. I'm not going to tell you where it is exactly, but it's still standing. Okay. Tony rushes in the house, and his wife, Kay, says, Tony, you've been shot. He says something to her. It's all over anyway. It doesn't matter. He opens the trap door to go down in the basement. She's pulling his hand. Stop, stop. No, it's all over, he says. He goes down in the basement and hangs himself. There just happened to be a rope hanging over a rafter, and he conveniently hangs himself. Okay, well, the sheriff finally comes to the house looking for the man who had killed Lewis. And Kay said, I'm really worried. He went down in the basement, and I haven't heard a peep from him in hours. Sheriff goes down there. Tony's dead, hanging from the rafters. Okay, they start their investigation, looking around. Why would he do this? Digging around. And what do you think they found in the basement floor under about 3 inches of dirt? They found Rose's body. Rose was a prostitute, they said. Was she? I don't know, but they found her body, and they found some of her jewelry. The daughter came to Virginia City and identified that's her jewelry because Rose had been dead for probably 6 months. Okay, what are you going to do? They hold Kay as a material witness. They've got Lewis Barton in the hospital. They're going to grill him when he gets better. And they've got a mess on their hands because all over national news, shootout, nude body found in the basement in a brothel. Nude body found in the basement in Virginia City. Well, that's pretty terrible publicity. Okay, so the city commissioners meet and they tell the sheriff, this time you're going to enforce the no prostitution in this town. So he did, and that is how prostitution ended, because Tony apparently killed Rose and himself, but that's a mystery. Did Tony actually kill himself, or did Kay and Lewis Barton cook up a story along with those lamb chops and kill Tony, hang Tony, and then tell the story? Could be. Who knows? I do know that Lewis Barton went on to live in Virginia City many years. I believe he ran for city commissioner in the 60s twice. He lost both times. He was known by a different name in Virginia City. Nobody knows why, but he chose to have a different first name. He was the man who walked around with a parrot on his shoulder. Okay, that's how prostitution came to end in Virginia City in 1947. It's legal in many places in Nevada, including Story County, but not in Virginia City. Okay, thank you.